everyone, and welcome to Or Something. This is the podcast where every week we talk about certain topics and the origins of them, or something. I'm Kristen. I really had to think about that for a second. And this is Carla.
Hi. Uh-oh, I'm getting loud again.
Uh-oh.
We're here.
We'll just
my voice cracked again.
Everything. Yeah. Oh my gosh.
Apparently.
Carla's still going through puberty.
And I guess that's what happened.
It's a wonderful time of your life.
Oh my gosh. That about puberty?
People try to do that. You know, like that stupid Are You There, God, It's Me, Margaret book. Did you ever read that when you were a kid?
Yes. I don't remember it, but yeah.
I hated it so much. I was like, don't try to fool me. I know what you're on about. This is not magical.
But I probably was clinging to it. Like, wow. This is what,
I think my sister really liked it.
It made me angry.
Yeah.
I remember being angry. I don't know why.
I was so angry.
But...
Yeah. Okay. Well, that took a turn. An interesting turn. Oh my gosh. Okay. Let's stop everything. I have to tell you what I was listening to right before we started recording this episode. I was listening to the newest episode of My Favorite Murder with Karen and Georgia, right? Like one of my favorite podcasts ever.
Yeah.
And this week on their podcast, Karen covers the story of these arsenic green dresses that were killing people. And she talks about the entire, like not the entire history of the green pigment, but she talks about the green pigment and how there was so much arsenic in it. And specifically during like the Victorian times, it became really popular in like the dresses and the home decor and everything. And it was like full on killing people. There was so much arsenic in it. And specifically that Shields green. Did you talk about Shields green? Yeah,
I did,
you mentioned it, right? Yeah.
Yep.
And it's like that from like the 1830s to like the 1860s or something. And people were complaining about how toxic it was as early as like, I think 1839 or something like that. And they used it for wallpaper. They used it for carpets. They used it for everything. Yeah, and people were just full on. This one girl was like using it to dye these like silk flowers and stuff. She was like 19 years old or something. Yeah. And she started turning green basically. Like her eyes were green. What? Like her skin started turning green, everything. She ended up like having this horrible death with all these like crazy things. And it kind of drew people's attention to like, oh, maybe we should change something. Which they still didn't for like decades, but I just thought it was so crazy that she was covering that when you had just covered it.
Just talked about it.
It's totally this thing of like, that's I think what I love about learning and like learning new words and learning about new things is you always kind of like see that stuff then, like, and you're like, are people just using that word a lot all of a sudden, or am I just noticing it more because I've learned it?
Always freaked me out. When I was a kid, I actually started wondering if like the word only kind of appeared when I learned it. It was like, wait, what? Why am I seeing this now? It's
almost like you think the entire world revolves around you, where you're like, what? How is this possible?
Like my child brain did not understand it, and so now I'm just
my
like,
adult brain doesn't understand.
Yeah, a good point. Yeah.
I just thought it was so cool that like every week that we've done whatever topics, that there seems to be something that like comes up afterwards.
Crazy
about it. It's just nuts. As soon as I saw like when she was talking about it, I was like, no way, this is amazing.
Because the timing, it's like literally the next week. Yeah. Same with the emergency numbers. It was the literal next week. Catalog, literal next week. Like not 2 weeks later.
Totally.
That's crazy.
It's crazy. Oh, also, I don't know if I mentioned it, but there's this cidery in Vernon, BC. If anybody wants it, you should check out the BX Press.
Okay.
It's like the best cider that's ever been made ever.
BC cider is wonderful.
It's so good.
So good.
Yeah.
So good. Anyway.
We've got lots of apples. But they came out, and I forgot to mention it before, but like after the episode that you did about apples, they had some posts on Instagram of this new special line of ciders that they're doing that are like really specialty ones, and it was called Malus, like Malus.
No way.
And I looked at it and I was like, I know what that means. Sorry.
Yeah. Oh,
lose my
and
voice.
We've lost our host. I will have to sing a song while you're drinking some water. Quick, everyone turn down your volume. Carla's going to start singing.
And it's going to be beautiful. Oh.
Oh, she's back.
I'm back. Oh, she's here. Everybody shush.
Yeah, we hear murmuring and the crowd shushing. What?
Yeah, what the hell? We're doing a live podcast? Oh my gosh.
Should.
Who's first this week? Should we just like jump into it before I actually lose my voice?
What happened to all your anecdotes? I was all looking forward.
That was my anecdote. Listen, I'm only one person. Okay, my other thing that happened this week.
Yes.
Was the animals. It was pouring rain when I went to the farm.
Oh. Yeah.
Because we had another atmospheric river like just dumping down on us, and we've got another one coming apparently. It's sunny today, which is amazing.
Yeah.
But it was like pouring rain, and so these poor animals had been like stuck inside. We had to work around them, which was kind of funny. A little scary at times because I'm like, these goats were like not having it. But all of the animals were like so irritated with each other. Like Baby the donkey and Lucy the pig were like at each other. Like they just were fighting. Like they were sleeping in the same area, and then when they got up because they thought that I had treats, they were like they were just kind of like like bugging each other, just how we do when we're cooped up and we just get like irritated with each other. Yeah, and it was total cabin fever. They just all were so miserable. I'm like, oh, poor guys. But I'm like, that's how we feel, especially after COVID, after like being cooped up with everybody for a year and a half.
Although, like someone that bought my parents' boat stopped by the house and was chatting, and he was just getting to it, and I was like, yeah, human contact. So we were chatting, and I'm just like, but then he started going on about like, you know, because he lives out in the boonies somewhere, and he was talking about how they were shooting mountain lions because they had been released into the area, but they have like livestock, and it was just this like the typical ignorant like farmer shooting anything that even like looks the wrong, you know, way at their cattle, not realizing that we need predators in the ecosystem. Like we have to balance and learn how to live with everything. I could go into a whole spiel. And then so I was like, that's nice. Now get the hell out of my house. I was just kind of like, screw social isolation. This isn't worth it. I'm like, you know what? Really? I come in contact with one human being for like 5 minutes, and I'm already
the worst. Yeah.
I'm like, no, thank you.
I know. I think that's like the big struggle now of like getting out into the world again. It's like I don't actually
I don't like people.
Yeah.
It's like,
and yes, it's necessary to like socialize and whatever, but it's like I only want to socialize with the people I actually like. That was like when I went to Eddie Izzard and I was next to that couple, and it was the most painful thing to listen to their conversation. I'm like, you guys are stupid. Shut up. I can't handle it.
Before I forget, I was watching a nature show, and they mentioned something that pigs can't like cool down like by themselves. They don't have like a little like sweat things or something. I don't know if it was sweat glands. I don't know what the hell. I don't pay that much attention, but like so I was laughing because last week, I guess, maybe, you said that you were forcing the pig to go enjoy the sunshine. I was like,
he's overheating. He's got an immediate sunburn and everything.
That's what I was laughing about. I'm like, you just toasted the pig.
To be fair, it wasn't hot out. It was just sunny. We don't get both things at one time. Heat and sunshine, no.
But I love that that's where my brain went. I'm like, did Kristen kill a pig?
No, Pickles is still alive. And grumpy as ever.
All right.
Oh my gosh. No. Now that's a perfect segue into my other anecdote.
Okay. I'm listening.
So today it's been sunny, which is great. And I went outside a little bit, which was awesome. But it has been so cloudy and so rainy here. It's just been miserable. And I mean, like anywhere in Canada, like at this time of year, we all are so deprived of vitamin D because we never see the sunshine. I mean, in Alberta, you guys have sunshine, but it's like too cold or too miserable to go. Like, it's not like you're going out in your t-shirt and shorts at this time of year to actually get like vitamin D, right?
Yeah, exactly.
So last night I was like, I normally have nail polish on my toenails, but I took it off because I'm going to go for a pedicure soon. And I was like, okay, whatever. And I had my feet out, like, on the couch last night. And Greg was like, he kind of looked at my feet like, whoa, your feet look weird. And I was like, what are you talking about? And when I looked at them, I was like, they look just so pale. I was like, oh my God, my feet look like corpse feet. Because he was like, I could tell he was kind of struggling to like say something because he didn't want to hurt my feelings. And he was like, they look like, he's trying to think of like a nice way to say it. And I was like, they look like corpse feet. And he's like, yeah, kind of, but that's not what I was going to say. And then he's like, they kind of look like an albino's feet or something. I'm like, okay. I was like, leave me alone. I don't go outside anymore. My feet don't see the sunshine. But we had a really long conversation about like how pale my feet were. He's like, you got to put some color on those toenails or
I like
something.
that he thought that like albino would be better. Like, that's a complete lack of pigment. And then
I know.
Like, corpse feet at least have some blue in them. It's like...
But which one is better? Ooh, the ultimate question. Let's put a poll on Instagram.
So,
which is better, corpse or
yes, hey,
albino?
we can add polls to our Spotify thing, so we do need to do that.
Ooh, okay.
People will be like, what the hell is this podcast? We'll be like, we don't know either.
That's a good question. We all wish we knew the answer.
Okay, sorry, I'm going to shuffle for a second. My cable is like poking all these different ways and whatnot. All right, I'm ready.
Okay. Is it me first this week or is it you first?
It's you, yeah.
Okay, how come I never can remember? It's like we don't have that many episodes. Or do we? I don't know what I'm saying anymore, you guys. I'm excited. I'm high on the vitamin D juices that are coming through the window. And meanwhile, I'm like trapped in my closet. Yeah, I'm in my closet. And I have to close the door to the closet so I don't even get residual sunshine from my bedroom. Because the stupid road behind us is so loud.
I know what I'm sending you for Christmas. I'm making a note right now.
What?
Vitamin D tablets.
Oh, I take vitamin D tablets.
More.
More, yeah. I just need
more vitamin D sent to Kristen.
I need one of those like sunshine lamps. I actually have a little one. Ooh. I should set it up in the closet here. Okay, I don't spend that much time in here, but
all your clothing is bleached.
Yeah. I imagine myself sitting here with one of those tinfoil things that they always used back in the day to like get as much sunshine. My face is just like beet red.
Yeah, he has to bring you a pina colada.
Yeah, exactly. But I only do it on my feet. I should just only tan my feet. And just be a real freak.
I love it.
A reverse like tan line. Reverse sock tan line. Oh my gosh. Okay. Moving right along. Okay, so this week I've got a little bit of a short one.
Me too.
I thought there would be more to it, but turns out there really isn't.
Yeah.
So
me too.
I was listening to this podcast, another murder podcast, because that's all I listen to, is True Crime South Africa. And she talked about like Jane Doe, like that they had named somebody a Jane Doe because whatever, they didn't know who she was and all this kind of stuff. It was an unsolved thing. And she kind of went into the history a little bit of why we call them John Doe and Jane Doe. And I thought, ooh, I want to know that. So I am doing the origin of John Doe and why we use John Doe or Jane Doe as a thing. Like, where did that come from and why that name?
I love it.
Yeah.
Wait, let me make a prediction because I love it.
Okay.
A guy who was actually named John Doe was devastated to find out that his name was going to be used for unidentified bodies. The end. Now you may go.
Yes, you're right. No, you're not. Thanks.
What?
Okay, so my sources for this are Wikipedia, mentalfloss.com, medium.com, and some other random stuff. Places. Okay, so now John Doe or Jane Doe are used when the true name of a person is unknown or it's being intentionally concealed. But how was John Doe specifically chosen as this placeholder name? So we go way back to ancient Rome. No, it didn't originate there, but...
Ugh.
I know, right?
You jerk.
In ancient Rome, there is like historically some names that they use, fake names that they used in hypothetical situations.
Oh.
So some of the names that they used were Numerius Negidius, which translated to "I refuse to pay." And
my gosh, that is my name. That's it. I'm legally changing it. That's me.
And that typically represented the defendant. And Aulus Agerius, which roughly translated to "I set in motion," and represented the plaintiff who would initiate a lawsuit. So they had these names used as people in legal situations where it's like, oh, hypothetically, if this person was the defendant, and this person, and they had to have a name for them, those were the names that they used. So the reason why I'm talking about fictitious legal names is because that is how the name John Doe started being used to represent an unknown identity or a hypothetical person.
Okay.
So
it wasn't a dead body first that
it wasn't a dead body first.
Identity.
That ended up just being like just what people use now, John Doe, for anybody that's unidentified.
Okay.
And so, of course, naturally, I think in true crimes, like in crime situations where they don't know what the body, like who it is, because John Doe had become such a huge, like, representation of that they just started using it. Yeah. Okay, cool. Okay, so the names John Doe and Richard Roe.
No.
Yes. And so for anybody who doesn't know the spelling too, it's spelled D-O-E. Doe as in like a deer. And Richard Roe, R-O-E. Instead of...
I was waiting for you to spell John as well.
Never. I'll never
J-O-N or J-O-H-N?
J-O-H-N.
Oh,
thank you very much. So the names John Doe and Richard Roe were regularly used in the English legal system to represent the plaintiff and the defendant in a fictitious legal process called an action of ejectment.
Wait, so it wasn't John Doe or Richard Roe, it was like the Latin thing where it was both of them.
Yeah, John Doe and Richard Roe.
Okay.
Yeah.
Got it.
So this legal process, it was really specifically connected to like landowners, like landlords and their tenants.
Okay.
So it's thought that this may have started as early as the reign of King Edward III, which was between 1327 and 1377. So like super
I knew that.
Duper early. Don't lie on the podcast. It's a podcast. You can tell no lies. Under Old English common law, there were like super complex rules around the actions that landowners could take against squatters or defaulting tenants.
Okay.
They were really, really technical and usually too difficult to be of any use to anybody. It's a great legal system.
How convenient.
Yeah, super convenient.
Sorry, illiterate people, but it's just too much for you. And really, it was just one sentence they couldn't read.
Yeah, this is complex. So the landowners or the landlords would bring an action of ejectment on behalf of a fictitious tenant against another fictitious person who had allegedly evicted him. So this is super... It took a lot of research for me to even figure out what the hell this meant. Because even on Wikipedia, it was like not... They put stuff and I'm like, this does not make sense. Like, what are they doing? Because they're basically creating like a fake judgment to bring before the court and get the court to assess if like who the land actually belongs to, like the ownership of the land, but they're doing it in a fictitious way, like a hypothetical way, like kind of saying to the court, like, hey, if this was the situation with this guy John Doe and like this, say this other guy Richard Roe, a friend of mine, like what would you say about it, kind of thing. Like what would happen?
And then it became official court ruling.
Basically. So the court would then have to decide if the fictitious landowner was the valid owner of the property and that the fictitious tenant wasn't, and ultimately would establish who the rightful owner of the property was. It is a super bizarre and roundabout way to bypass the old English common laws.
Oh.
Yeah, it allowed the landlords to avoid many technical legal procedures. And it was just crazy. The practice of doing this like weird fictitious thing became obsolete in 1852. They said like no more of this. But it was around for centuries. Like they did that for centuries. It's crazy. So in those cases, it almost always was like John Doe, Richard Roe. There were some other names that people used, like I think like William Stiles and stuff like that. But John Doe and Richard Roe were like the most famous. Like they were the ones that were used most commonly.
Okay.
In some cases, people started using those names in order to keep the names of high-profile people private. So if they had like a legal thing or something and they didn't want somebody to know that that's who it was about, but they still needed to name somebody in the document, they're like, oh, that's John Doe, instead of like King Edward the 27th or whatever. Okay, so now the question becomes like, why did they start using
the king is taken to court?
Yeah, I know, right? Like nothing about that sentence made sense. Nothing about my entire topic this week makes sense.
I love it.
This is all true.
I just lost my mic.
Man down.
Even my mic fainted from the excitement. Oh my gosh.
Okay, so why did they use the names John Doe and Richard Roe? Like, why were these the ones that started being used, and why did they continue being used? And the answer to that is nobody knows. They can't find a case. They can't seem to find the case where they were first used. So some people say that it's possible that say the first time that those people were used, that it just kind of like caught on and they kept using those people or something like that. It's possible that they were chosen because John and Richard were like super common names in England at that time. So they were kind of names that could encapsulate like the everyman, right?
The last names are the most surprising.
That's the thing. The surnames Doe and Roe, both, so this is the only thing that people can kind of find that are similar, is that they both reference deer. So Doe is a female deer, and Roe is a Eurasian deer species that is really common in Britain.
Oh.
Some people said, I saw somewhere where they said that like Doe can represent deer and then Roe is like fish eggs or whatever. And some people said that quite often the people that were in these actions were like hunting and fishing and stuff on the properties, like they're trying to figure out something, but they're like, it's such a thin thing because they could have called them like John Buck and like Richard like Fish or whatever, like why those, right? So my thought is that it started with, say, somebody named John Doe, and then they just wanted to make it rhyme Richard Roe, right?
Yeah.
I don't know. It's like basic. Humans are not that complex.
I
know. And then some people say that they might have actually been real names for people that were used initially, and then they just kept being used, like carried over, kind of copy and pasted into other things and became
sort of like kind of like that legal precedent when they're like, in the case of
exactly
Smith versus Wesson or whatever, right?
Yeah. So there were, as I mentioned before, there were some other names that were used, including, and this one, it makes me laugh really hard, because it's all about like land titles and like that's where the disputes were. So one of the names that was used quite often was John Good Title. Like his whole last name is condensed to one word, Good Title.
Well, there goes my theory. I'm like, maybe Roe and Doe were just really quick to write, right? Like, you have to keep repeating the name. But Good Title, well, there goes that theory out the window.
But it could be like that's why those ones weren't used as much, and it was Doe and Roe were used more commonly, right? Then John Styles, like William Styles, Richard Miles, or John Noakes. So there were some other ones that were commonly
But Doe and Roe
used.
don't sound real, so that almost is like, right? They're not going to mistake someone real for that, right? But those other names sound like they could be actual names, so maybe it would be confusing.
Exactly, because I think it would be a lot more common to have some of those other names, except maybe Good Title.
Wait, was that an actual case? Right?
Yeah, and I think maybe something with like using Good Title would be a little misleading because it's almost like kind of trying to sway the proceedings a little bit. I don't know. Nobody knows. Like, it's just a bunch of random like guesses as to where it maybe came from.
Okay, you know? That's kind of surprising.
So the names John or Jane Doe have become standard placeholders for unidentified, anonymous, or hypothetical parties in court cases. And they will bring in the names Roe or other names if there are more than two anonymous parties involved. For example, the case of the infamous Roe versus Wade. Right? In the States. Yeah, because she didn't want to be known, but there were also like other anonymous things, so she was known as...
I think I knew that at some point, but I don't think of it that way. I just assume it's a name.
I didn't think of it either. I was like, oh, that's the name, Roe. Like, and that's not her name at all. But it was to keep her anonymous because she didn't want to be disclosed. Also, I just saw a thing on Instagram from... Trevor Noah, that he was saying that it sounds like Roe v. Wade is going to be overturned potentially down in the States, and I'm like, are you kidding me? It's a really funny, if you guys like Trevor Noah or like laughing or like somebody who's smart, go follow Trevor Noah or the Daily Show on Instagram, and his video that he just put up today about this Roe v. Wade thing is so funny. It's really good.
I have to watch.
Yes, you need to go watch it. It's really funny. It's really short. It's like 20 seconds long, but he's like, oh yeah, interesting that the conservatives are so, they really want to protect life so much, except when it comes to coronavirus or school shootings or like all healthcare, universal healthcare, all these other things. And I'm like, yes, thank you. Oh my gosh. Man. But he says it way funnier, so go watch it. So in the UK, so as of 1852, that way of using the court system, they stopped doing that specifically. But they now have something called a John Doe injunction or a John Doe order. And it's actually called that. So this is used if an unknown person has possession of confidential personal information and is threatening to disclose it. A John Doe injunction may be sought against that person. So the first time that this form of injunction was used since 1852 was in 2005 when lawyers...
Edward Snowden.
When lawyers acting for J.K. Rowling obtained an interim order against an unidentified person who had offered to sell chapters of a stolen copy of an unpublished Harry Potter novel to the public. So they didn't know who the person was, but they needed to like put an injunction to stop it. It from happening.
But they created this injunction in
1852, they created it. So
but they didn't create it to use it?
I don't know.
How the heck does law work? You'd think they'd only create something when they needed it, right?
Yeah.
Oh, no, I'm stupid.
Oh, I think it's like the form of the injunction. Like, so like the use of a hypothetical person where you don't know who the person is, but you're trying to bring action against them. That's, I think, what it means in my notes. Sorry, that was a little misleading of how I wrote that out.
No, I get it.
But yeah, so basically it's the idea of like taking an order out, like a legal action against somebody that you don't know who they are, like an anonymous person. Yeah. So they did that in order to stop whoever was was making these threats so that once they did it, if they were to do it, they could be found guilty. Like there's already an injunction out there for it.
Oh.
Right? Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does make sense. Yes.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay.
Isn't that crazy?
So I'm calling for a John Doe. What's it called? I almost said induction. Injunction. Against you if you ever call me stupid.
Good luck with
and
that.
You will have to say, how dare court. You? Never. And you will owe me 27 Jelly Bellies as
yeah, punishment. Right. No way, man. I'm going to eat them
How dare
all.
you?
I'll give you all the grossest ones.
Listen, John Doe.
I'm going to eat all the buttered popcorn ones for myself.
But I know who you are. Ow.
Yeah.
Doesn't work.
Sucker. I like that wasn't my defense. I was just like frantically trying to think of Jelly Belly flavors.
Yeah, you're panicking. Yeah.
Which ones am I
It almost worked. Damn it.
Duped again.
Yeah.
Okay, so that was basically it for the history, and now I just have some like fun little like anecdotal things about John Does. So in 2009, the New York Times reported on the difficulties and unwanted attention experienced by a man actually named John Doe. So it is a real name. When you were saying, oh, that's a fake name, there are people out there named John Doe.
Oh, no.
So it was often suspected that he was using a pseudonym, obviously. And he was regularly questioned by airport security staff and like regularly stopped whenever he had to show his ID for things like that. It was not, everybody thought it was fake.
Oh no.
And another man named John Doe was often suspected of being an incognito celebrity. I'd be like, well, then stop wearing sunglasses everywhere.
Yeah. Or
he
like
feeds into it.
Just go in a newspaper and be like, clearly I'm not famous. Look at my face. Right.
So there are parallels in other countries where they use certain names as like hypothetical placeholders or to conceal someone's true identity or whatever it is. I didn't really delve too much into like how it became something in like for dead bodies, and because people don't really talk about it, I think it's just a natural transition to it's a placeholder to use to identify somebody that and it sounds like they started using it fairly early to identify unknown victims or unknown
people. So they
people.
probably just culturally knew that it
Yeah, because they were
especially
like,
since legal stuff is like so hand in hand with the police, right?
Exactly.
Yeah,
And I think that it was already like a very commonly known thing that these were. It was a good way. As soon as you would say John Doe, people would know that you were talking about that you didn't know their identity.
Yeah.
So the name Ashok Kumar is used in court cases in India. The abbreviation NN is used in European legal systems, and it's based on the Latin term nomen nescio, meaning I do not know the name.
Wait. Were we talking about so John Doe was like an American thing?
No, it was British.
Okay.
But so this is like in the rest of Europe. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Yeah, why would I think they would take John Doe as a thing? I don't know.
Yeah. So John Doe was very much British, and then came and is like widely used in North America. And I think basically
it's just my classic colonial thinking. Oh, they don't use that in France.
Oh,
why
you don't
not?
speak English? Let me say it
louder. John Doe. Dum dum.
You don't know me? And then the very last one that I have makes me laugh so hard. So this name, Israeli, is a new variant that is starting to be used in, yep, you guessed it, Israel. They have a different name that they've used for a really long time, but it's becoming more common now to use the name Israeli as like to like represent somebody where you don't know their identity.
Because then it's like that. The most generic.
It's like Israeli.
Yeah.
Israel.
Yeah.
It's like, yeah, why not? It's like
and
Canada,
there won't be someone named that. Exactly.
Canada,
Oh my
Canadian.
gosh. Yeah. That'd be terrible.
Or Tim Hortons. That should be
Yeah, the headline, Tim Hortons found dead. Oh my God. Canada starts rioting.
Oh my gosh. So something that has become, yeah, exactly, has become common, especially in like murder cases, like unsolved, or like, you know, where they don't know who the identity of the victim, is where they will also add other stuff into the name. So like if they've got a bunch of Jane Does, you can't just keep naming everybody Jane Doe, because what's going to differentiate them, right? So some of them number them where it's like John Doe 1 or whatever, but a lot of them will use like where the body was found. So it would be like I don't know,
John Doe
Las Vegas
trash can
Doe or whatever, or like or something
disrespectful like that. Decapitated John
or
Doe.
She was just a prostitute Doe. Nobody cares. Like really, it's basically all of it. Poor people.
Yeah. Oh.
But yeah, so it's kind of like been adapted and used in whatever purposes it needs to now. But that was the origin of it. That's where it started.
Whoa.
Yeah.
Isn't
that crazy?
Never would have thought that.
I never even questioned that it would need to start somewhere. That's just one of those things that we just always, you just know that that's what it represents.
Yeah. I thought it'd be like a 1930s kind of lazy detective guy. He's like, I don't know, it's Jane Doe, like a noir kind of thing that was started in like fiction books or something. And then they started using it. I don't know. That's crazy.
I know. I was really shocked that it started so early.
Yeah.
And that it was actually like in legal things. I thought it would just be, I actually was surprised I could find anything about it, because I thought it would be much more, like kind of how you said, where it's like, oh, somebody just kind of started saying it and it caught on, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, that's crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
What's
now
your
I'm
topic?
That much smarter.
Woohoo.
Okay, so I was threatening to sing. This time I am going to sing. Are you ready?
I'm ready.
I don't know how to sing.
Do it anyway.
And I don't know the words to the song. This is how I sing it. But the beginning line is... I don't remember it. Do you know the Muffin Man? The Muffin Man, the Muffin Man.
Oh my gosh! I don't know the Muffin Man.
So... I don't know if it's Do You Know. That's how I sang it always as a kid, but I'm stupid.
Yeah, I think it is.
So, muffins. I'm going to talk muffins. But,
ooh,
specifically, again, this is trademark Carla Hot Mess situation.
Okay.
Muffin tins.
Oh.
I just bought one, finally, for the first time. Not ever, but like since I've been here. And
you didn't have a muffin tin?
Not for like at least...
Whoa. I've always had one. I think it's just something I've always thought you have
in Calgary.
To have. Yeah.
Right? Yeah. But not here. I don't know.
Weird.
So, yeah. So, okay, here we go. Ready?
Oh my gosh. I'm excited.
So, for anyone who doesn't know, I'm just going to do a bit of a definition thing. So, muffin tins. Oh, my sources are the internet. Muffin tins. And
the World Wide Web.
Yeah. Muffin tins and muffin pans are typically metal bakeware, which has round bowl-shaped depressions into which you put like muffin or cupcake batter, right? Most of them have room for like 12 muffins, but now they come in all different shapes and sizes. And the muffin tins that I'm talking about, that I want to know, that everybody knows, but there's old ones. Anyway, you have the cup, and then there's room for the batter to like spill over the edge to create the classic cupcake and muffin dome top, right? Yeah. That's the tin, the quintessential, right? You think, okay, yeah, muffin tin. Okay. Apparently they came out of nowhere, so let's enjoy this conversation here. Okay, so muffin tins can be made out of aluminum, stainless steel, cast iron. Cast iron apparently was like very popular.
That would be so heavy.
I know. Or silicone now. They can be coated or uncoated. Historically, they used galvanized steel, and galvanized steel is like just a zinc coating, which helped it this metal be more stable and that kind of thing. Muffins can be split into two categories. Okay, so I needed to go into the history of muffins to figure out this tin situation. Yeah. Before, I think it was the 18th century, muffins in America even were what we know or think of as English muffins, right? So an English muffin was called a muffin.
Oh.
So English muffins are similar to crumpets. They aren't the same exactly, but they're a yeasted dough. And yeah, I'll get into exactly, like, more detailed later. And then I'm going to talk about English muffins versus American muffins. And American muffins need that tin. They need that so that the batter can overflow and create the dome shape, right? Okay.
Yeah, because English muffins don't look at all like that.
No, they don't. So, what we call English muffins, they're those flat kind of discs. There's no dome. It's just this flat, like it's a hockey puck, basically. It almost tastes like a hockey puck as well.
It's the
and
McDonald's
even the
egg McMuffin.
Yeah, exactly. Oh, there you go. Yeah. Or hockey puck, as I call it. No, but you're right. Even the most original, like the earliest recipes for English muffins said that you pretty much had to, like once you baked it, you should eat it toasted with butter, because otherwise it would just be this like rock hard thing. Yeah. So it was even created to be toasted. I do now. I didn't as a kid, but I really like them now. Yeah.
I never really had them as a kid.
And I got to the point where I was eating them without toasting, but it's kind of gross if you don't toast it.
Yeah, you got to toast it.
Yeah, but so, where am I?
I'm sorry.
No. Initially, muffins were what we call English muffins. Yeah. They actually use something called muffin rings to make them. Muffin rings are about 1 inch high, little metal kind of things. And in various magazines from the 1860s they described how to make the muffins. So, American magazines, sorry.
Okay.
Batter is poured into the rings, which are the rings are then placed on a griddle.
Okay.
A flat griddle. So they would prep a flat griddle with pork fat, usually, sometimes usually preheated, I should say, and then place the yeasted dough into the rings. Then they put the rings on paper and then on the flat griddle.
Okay.
So it was just metal rings on a thing. Then they'd shove it in the oven, and after it came out of the oven, they would flip it, they'd put back in the oven out, and then they would do the whole toasting thing. There's a whole recipe for it, right?
Okay. Which
is just put it over the fire, put some butter in it, now put it over the fire again till the butter melts. So my quest to find actual muffin tins led me to a bunch of recipes that only made mention of already existing muffin pans. So this is infuriating, okay? So for example, American author Maria Parloa, she lived between 1843 and 1909. She wrote books on cooking and housekeeping, and she was the founder of 2 cooking schools. She was actually an interesting figure, so if anyone wants to read more about her, I would strongly suggest that. She was pretty cool. In her new book titled New Cookbook and Marketing Guide, she said that muffin pans, cups, or tins should be used rather than muffin rings, since at the time of writing the cookbook, muffin rings had faded in popularity.
Okay.
So, some point mid 1800s, I'm guessing. I don't quite remember when the book was written. 1880, maybe. She's already saying that muffin rings are passé, right?
Okay.
So I'm like, muffin pans? They exist, right? I'm like, I'm getting closer. No. By 1880, Parloa differentiated the American muffin from the bread dough English muffin. In this country, a muffin usually means a cake baked in molds in the oven, right? Like I was trying to explain earlier.
Yeah.
But, some more examples. In the Pennsylvania Farm Journal, July 1854, it says, butter your muffin cups. Marion Tyrie's Housekeeping in Old Virginia. In her book, Housekeeping in Old Virginia, 1879. She had a muffin recipe it was kind of like pound cake, baked in something called snowball cups. So people were using molds already, but I'm still not finding anything about muffin pans. So while scouring the internet, one source had an old illustration of the Muffin Man song. I thought, I'm on to something. I thought, yeah, let's do this. But then, of course, they'd be talking about English muffins. I don't know why I thought this would lead me to some rich muffin history.
Oh, I just assume it's like our muffin.
Our muffins. It's not. So I'm going to talk about it anyway because it's fun. Why not?
Yeah.
The Muffin Man was first recorded in British text in 1820, but obviously the song existed before then, right? So,
okay.
Just briefly, the word muffin is first found in print in 1703, but it was spelled Muffin, like Mukau, like Muffin. It is of uncertain origin, but possibly derived from either a Low German word, muffin with an E, the plural muffin is the plural of, or mouf, I should say, meaning small cake.
Oh,
or
I like that.
It's from the Old French mouflé, my soufflé, meaning my mouflé, meaning soft as in soft bread. So they don't know.
Okay.
But English muffins, were sold, the yeasted dough ones, were sold door to door in England by hawkers as a snack bread before most homes had their own ovens.
Oh.
They'd actually walk around with these big like trays on their heads and go through the crowds. And the expression Muffin Man meant a street seller of muffins. And one example they found was in writing from 1754 in a poem, which includes the line, "Hark, the shrill muffin man his carol plies." Fun fact, because I noticed that shrill thing there, the bell ringing of muffin men became so common that by the 1840s, the British Parliament passed a law to prohibit bell ringing by muffin men. But the muffin men didn't care. They did it anyway. They're like, forget it.
The rebels.
We've got muffins to sell. So this was happening in Europe, right?
Oh my God.
They're all having...
I love that.
Sorry. And apparently cupcakes were... they called them fairy cakes in the UK, and they kind of got big way later with like Nigella Lawson or something. So
okay.
I just kind of left the UK over there, and I came back to America. I'm like, forget you people. Okay, so in America, they're still making them too. But then they discovered quick breads.
Ooh.
And what happened is they discovered pearl ash, which is a refined form of potash. Remember potash? Mm-hmm. So maybe people did borrow it from their neighbors. Yeah. I joked about that last episode. Do you have any pearl ash or potash? I don't care.
Spare a cup of potash.
So the pearl ash, which is just, I think, crushed or potash, like it's like a fine version of potash, I think. I could be wrong.
Okay.
But anyway, pearl ash produces carbon dioxide gas in dough, so it acted as a quick leavening agent. So we didn't actually invent or discover baking soda until, I forgot. It says somewhere. But that came later, I think in the 50s or something. No, not 50, whatever. So basically they used pearl ash, right? Mm-hmm. And suddenly people are like, dang, quick breads. Because yeasted breads, you have to wait. You have to let them rise for like at least an hour.
Then it can not happen properly. Mm-hmm. Like they're much more finicky, right?
Tasty, but very finicky. So, where am I here? Oh, I lost my thing. Okay. So there was a book. Everybody on the internet basically attributes a woman named Amelia Simmons. She wrote a book called American Cookery in 1796. She published recipes using pearl ash. Oh, here's my thing. 1857 was when baking soda was developed. But anyway, people were using pearl ash. And even though the term cupcake was first mentioned in 1828, Amelia Simmons was apparently the first person to make a cupcake recipe and popularize cupcakes. Okay. So now I have to go into cupcakes because they're the same shape as muffins, or use the same thing, right? So I was like, why didn't I think of looking for cupcakes? Because I just assumed everyone called it a muffin tin.
That's what I thought too. But I guess it makes sense that it's a cupcake.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So, cupcakes are just sweeter muffins, basically. Originally, before there were muffin tins or cupcake pans, cupcakes were baked in small pottery bowls called ramekins. Sometimes they used teacups or even other ceramic mugs.
Oh, no way.
So, when bakers started to rely on standard cup measurements. This is also because people can't exactly say why they're called cupcakes. It's either because they were baked in cups or because of the standard cup measurements that were coming out. So something became popular called 1, 2, 3, 4 cakes, or quarter cakes, where you'd have like 1 cup butter, 2 cups sugar, 3 cups flour, and 4 eggs. So it was the easy way to remember how to make cake, right? Because not everyone had access to like cookbooks and that kind of thing, right? Or magazines or whatever. So they just started popularizing the 1, 2, 3, 4 cakes.
Cool.
Yeah, so I was like, okay, I'm onto something. 1, 2, 3, 4 cakes. And I thought, so did they just use cups and then like, but who invented the frickin' muffin tin? Because these are like, it's not like they connected their cups in the oven and like, anyway. So I'm like, okay, I'm going to start looking for small cakes now, cake molds. I'm like, I thought back to like old timey, like those huge banquets with kings and queens and the molded cakes and everything, right? Like maybe Marie Antoinette had like, right?
Yeah.
So I stumbled across so small cakes existed before this, obviously, right? So there was something called queen cakes. They were individually portioned pound cakes. The earliest recipe for queen cakes was in 1725 in a book called Court Cookery by Robert Smith. And it was kind of like a cupcake, I guess. So it had flour, sugar, fruit, butter, eggs, and spices, and it was oven baked. So I'm like, all right, queen cakes. By early 1800s, you see people calling for individual small tins, which they called patty pans, right? Leads to another famous song, Patty Cake, right?
Oh my gosh, no.
I always sang patty cake, which is technically...
I always said patty cake too.
Me too. So it is actually patty pans, or petty pans sometimes, but for some reason people wrote patty cake. I'm like, you're idiots. Anyway, that's just a little side note.
Oh my gosh, wow.
Yeah, so... this is just a bit redundant. I'm going to skip this. I stumbled across something called gem pans yet. Okay, so they're patty pans and gem pans. I had to take a sharp turn in my research.
The history of every other kind of pan that's ever existed.
Yeah, so gems, they look an awful lot like muffins. They're kind of like little flat muffins. They're like what your muffins look like when you try to make them at home. Oh, and they end up being just those
and you're like,
pathetic little things.
Go well. Yeah.
Yeah, and you're like, where's the bakery dome? Yeah. That's what a gem looks like.
Okay.
A guy named... Okay, so this was the exciting part. So a guy named Nathaniel Waterman, he designed gem pans. And he actually patented his design for a gem pan. So gem pans, I guess, maybe existed. I don't know if he stole the idea. I don't know. In 1859, right?
Okay.
And what it looked like was kind of imagine like more shallow little cups, or dishes, like little ramekins, connected, but without that like lip where the dough can spill over.
Okay, so nothing to catch the spillover dough.
Exactly.
But they are connected little round bits. Okay.
Yeah, like a frame.
I think I've seen something like that, actually.
Yeah. Yeah. And so he designed it so the heat could kind of go around each cup nicely. And they were more shallow, though. And I thought, well, did somebody see this and go, I'm going to make a muffin? I was going to go into like European molds, or like, because I thought of Dutch pancakes, how they're made in those little...
puffages?
Yeah. They're made, like you pour the batter into those little...
Yeah, like a little frying pan with like little dips in it to make teeny tiny little...
so I thought, did they invent it? But I found nothing, so I was like, okay. So I'm like, okay, let's go back in time to cake molds, like I was saying, right? Okay, so back in ancient times, this is just kind of fun facts, they had simple bread-like cakes, which were sweetened with honey and sometimes nuts and fruits, right? But they would usually just kind of shape them by hand, right? Although in some ancient texts, they did actually mention like cake molds, which I thought was kind of cool.
Ooh.
But, okay, so according to food historians, the precursor of modern cakes, so a round little cake, were first baked in Europe around the mid-17th century. This is due primarily to advances in technology and ingredient availability. So, it's not like everyone had ovens, right? They were like...
Yeah.
And they didn't even really have ovens until way later. They just used open fire.
Right.
Right? So, the earliest thing I can find to like a proper tin anyway was they're called cake hoops. So it's kind of like the muffin rings, where they would like butter the hoop and then put the batter in. They'd put it on flat trays and that kind of thing. So that was no help. Then I went back to my book, my history of food in 100 recipes.
Yeah.
I know. I was so excited. I'm like, oh, I used an actual book for research.
Oh my gosh. What?
So this is so fun. So as far back as the 1300s, people were using pie dough as containers for their food. So you weren't meant to eat pie dough back then.
What?
Was just, so they would make pies, meat pies, fruit pies, all that kind of thing. But you would eat. It was just so that it was used as, the dough was used as a vessel to keep the meat moist, or like to make the nice gooey sweet center of like a fruit pie.
So they would eat out the insides of like a meat pie, for example, and they'd leave the crust.
Yeah.
The crust is the best part.
This was before the 1300s. Yeah.
Okay.
Then I think in the 1300s, there was a shift where this French guy started like making edible like pie dough.
No freaking way.
Right, it was a little side note, but I'm like, dang. Yeah. So, gosh. Like a lot of food historians will be like, they basically didn't have any kind of cake molds or anything for the longest time.
Oh my gosh.
Right? They just used like
what did they do?
Dough or whatever, right? So by the 1600s, we had those little cake molds, right? But that's literally all I could find. I have nothing. The closest I got were the gem pans. Yeah.
So then somebody took those gem pans and they basically attached it to a tray higher up. Because somebody...
Yeah,
like,
but who?
But who?
What company?
I can tell that somebody was like angry that their stuff was spilling all over the place, and like, so I wish somebody would just make this and connect it so that there's a lip here that will catch all the spill and whatever. Right?
Or maybe manufacturing, it was just easier to punch, like, do a depression in. But so like the closest I got was like 1850s. I'm like, are you kidding me right now? People are usually all over these patents and these like,
Wow.
Yeah. And people are like, oh, vintage muffin pan. I'm like, can you tell me about it? Who made it? Where did it come from? What year was it from? Nothing. It's like this. So if anyone listening can tell me,
maybe you're an heir to the muffin tin fortune. Maybe your great-great-grandfather, great-great-great-great-great-great-grandfather worked in a muffin tin factory at some point.
Right? Like, also, side note, I don't like that, like, most research ends up being, like, European, Western kind of stuff, because then were they, like, because Japanese people, for example, make wonderful desserts.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. So I'm like, maybe people were traveling and, like, saw something. I don't know. I do find that a lot of it is
like I mean, obviously, because we live in North America, so I think a lot of our the stuff that we find when we do searches for things, the first stuff that comes up is North American or Western.
That's true. Yeah.
Right? But there's so much stuff that was
and the
invented
muffin, it's
and
believable
started
that
way
it's
back
here because it's such a stupid food that people even like muffins.
Do you like muffins? Like American muffins?
I love the idea of them. I love buying them, and sometimes I enjoy eating I enjoy the tops, so like the classic Seinfeld episode, the muffin tops, right?
I've been binging Seinfeld lately. It's awesome.
I will say there's a bakery here in Edmonton, although they're changing a lot. I'm getting mad at them, so I'm not going to say their name. They can shove it, but they make the most delicious bran muffins, and you wouldn't think a bran muffin could even be.
I do actually kind of like a bran muffin. I do like bran muffins with
these
butter
ones
on
are
them, though.
The best muffins I think I've ever had.
Yeah.
Even compared to, not just bran, but like
just
any.
Ever. Yeah. Amazing. It's so hard. I find it really hard to find a good muffin.
You know what it is about muffins? When they first started, they said that they were maybe like 100 some calories, 150 calories max. The original ones.
They're like...
Now they're like, you can get a muffin that could even be 600 some calories, which for me is annoying because they're not very filling.
No.
And they're not as good as cake. So I'm thinking, why the hell am I eating this muffin? Why would you do that?
Just go eat actual cake. That's satisfying and good.
However,
if that's what you're going to do.
Something like carrot cake is too sweet for me, so I definitely prefer a carrot muffin over carrot cake.
Oh, I love carrot cake.
I just wish they didn't put icing all over it.
I love icing on it.
It's too much.
Insane?
It's too sweet.
I don't know if I can be friends with you anymore.
Because they put like carrots and other raisins and like just so much sweet.
You know what's
like
really
naturally
good
sweet food
is when people put pineapple in their carrot cake.
Yeah, that I can.
That's really
imagine.
good.
But that's more sugar. And then they put stuff on it. I'm like, I'm gonna die.
Yeah.
From all the sugar. But.
Yeah, I'm not a huge muffin person.
That with age, like sweetness is not as tolerable. Like I used to be able to eat like all kinds of candy, and my nephew now will be like, "Here, eat some chocolate with me." I'm like, "Okay," all excited because it's like, "Ooh, candy," and then I eat it, and I'm like, "I'm gonna lose my teeth."
I go through phases, like if I've like, because I try to not have as much like outside sugar in like unnatural sugar, refined sugar, whatever it's called. In my diet as possible. Like I don't put it in my coffee anymore and that kind of stuff. Like I'd really try to keep it out because I've got such a sweet tooth that when I start eating sweet stuff, holy cow, it's
me too.
Dangerous. Like it's bad.
But it's like I can't eat like the kids sweet stuff, if that makes sense. Like chocolate bars and that kind of, like I can have maybe a little tiny one at Halloween, right? But like
I have no problem with that. The only time I find it too sweet is if I've like really been strict with my diet and I've had hardly any sweets. Then I'll be like, oh, that's really sweet. But I get used to it almost immediately, and I'm like, give me more. I get so addicted. I have such a sugar addiction. It's terrible. It turns me into a fat monster. It's awful.
And on that note, I'm going to go bake some. Actually, my next baking project, believe it or not, is a pumpkin spice muffin.
Oh, really?
So, I mean, I bought the muffin tin. I have to make something now.
I know, right? You know,
I don't know who invented that damn muffin tin, but I'm going to use it.
It's just going to make you mad every time you look at it.
Yeah, it will.
You'll be on a mission to always find out where it came from. We'll have to keep our eyes peeled for any signs. What I'm going to do, I'm going to go make, because I've got a packet in my cupboard for Yorkshire puddings that I always make in my muffin tin.
Nice.
Yorkshire pudding.
I know.
I remember I used to think that Yorkshire pudding was like pudding. Like pudding that we eat. Like chocolate pudding. It's weird because
it's like, pudding.
Okay, the reason why I'm hesitating and it's hard for me to describe it a different way is because with Greg and his, like, Greg didn't know what pudding was. I was like, I got some Jell-O pistachio pudding mix because I'm like, I love the Jell-O pistachio pudding.
Yeah.
And that's what we call pudding here. But there, they use the word pudding as their word for dessert. Like, what are we having pudding, right? And I guess around the world, I think in Australia they do the same thing.
I think in the UK,
maybe in the UK, that's what they say. And I was like, no, I'm not talking about dessert. He's like, well, what's for pudding? Like, what are we having? I'm like, we're having pudding. He's like, yeah, I know, but what are we having? And I'm like, no. And I could never find a different way to describe pudding. Like, how do you describe it? So finally I was getting so frustrated. And I think I ended up explaining it like, I'm like, it's like yogurt, but it's like sweet. Like, it's the consistency of yogurt, kind of, but it's like a dessert. It was so hard to describe.
Custard.
I guess like custard. Yeah, okay.
Yogurt.
But I don't know. I couldn't think of anything else because I never eat custard here. Like, that's not really
true, but
a thing.
Custard is very,
I guess,
right? But what does he call pudding then?
I don't know. He doesn't think about it.
But they have to eat it.
I don't know if they do. I don't think they do.
No, they have to, because in like.
Do they have to? Why? I guess they would just call it some kind of custard or something. Maybe, I don't know. I don't think they do it. Like, I was like, don't you have like the pre-packaged little snack packs that we used to have in our lunches?
Right.
He didn't know what I was talking about. Like, I had to take him down that aisle at the grocery store.
Show him.
Yeah.
And he still didn't have any
Greg,
sense?
though, so, like, he didn't do the grocery shopping in his household. Like, he's like bachelor life. He didn't,
Even seeing it, he was like, I don't know what this is.
Yeah.
So chocolate, like custardy.
Yeah.
That's not
And when
right.
I gave it to him, he didn't really like it because he didn't really know. Like, he's like, I don't know. It takes him a long time to come around to stuff. He finally is starting to like tacos, so we're getting somewhere.
Sneak some pudding in his coffee.
Yeah. But it makes me happy because I'm like, I love the pistachio pudding so much, so I don't have to share it with him. I could just eat the whole thing by myself.
Nice.
Yeah. It's great.
Okay. So I'll make pumpkin spice muffins and you'll make
Yorkshire
lots of pistachio pudding.
And some pistachio pudding. Yeah, all the puddings, basically.
I love
Yay.
it.
Okay. Talk to you guys next week.
Bye.
Bye.